Kia ora, I'm Bridget Snelling, the Country Manager of Xero, and I'm really excited to have another guest with me today to talk about small business success. Today I am joined by the amazing Johnny Davison, who is the co-founder and CEO of Hitrak. Hi, Johnny.
Hi, thanks for having me.
It's so good to have you here, and I've been so excited about this conversation because I love your business, and we are going to get into the detail of your business. But before we do, I want to know a bit more about Johnny. I mean, obviously, I know you quite well, so I know the story, but I know our listeners will love hearing your background and how you got into logistics and the software that you're running. But let's start with a bit of background about how you got here. And in particular, let's talk about your mountaineering days, which are fascinating.
Yeah, cool. Well, grew up in Auckland, went to school in Auckland, and on our way to school each morning, Mum would point out an old man out on his morning walk with a cane, and every morning he'd be walking down Portland Road in Remuera, and she said to me, "Johnny, that's the first man to climb Mount Everest."
Oh, wow.
And yeah, so I remember just being just absolutely captivated by that idea that there's an old man who actually lived over the fence from school who was the first man to climb Mount Everest. And I couldn't quite sort of get my head around it other than to think, okay, well, good enough for him, good enough for me.
I love that.
So I was 7 at the time and forgot about that. It was just a little spark, a little moment in time that I didn't forget. And fast forward to sort of 10 or 15 odd years later, about 10 years later, Dad gave me that book, Into Thin Air, which was a story about Rob Hall, Andy Harris, Adventure Consultants, which is a Wanaka-based company, climbing Mount Everest in 1996, being caught up in a massive storm.
Yeah.
There's a book written about it. They sadly perished, passed away. But it was almost like the reignition of that original spark. So I had this sort of original thought, age 7, age 17, read this book. I thought, that's right, I wanted to, I had that thought when I was a kid. So I started going to the indoor climbing gym down in Panmure, just indoor rock climbing. Didn't live near the mountains. I go on the occasional ski trip down to Ruapehu or, every now and again down to Queenstown once every 3 or 4 years. And just started climbing and reading a whole heap on mountaineering. So I read all the books on mountaineering, Sir Chris Bonington's books, Everest the Hard Way. I'd read, obviously, Into Thin Air. I'd read Anatoly Bukarev's book, The Climb, which was another account.
Gee, you really did your prep.
I didn't live near the mountains. I lived in Auckland, and so went to the local climbing gym and read. And got to the point where eventually, I convinced my dad to half fund a introduction to mountaineering course down in the South Island. Turns out that the guide on that course, and I was aged around about 20 at the time, was Rob Hall from Everest, from that story Into Thin Air.
Wow.
It was his mentor. So he'd been on Everest back in 1987 with Lydia Brady, the first woman to climb Everest solo without oxygen. So she's another sort of Wanaka Hawea local and big personality down the South Island. I met him, kind of plugged into that whole community of climbers. And now I'll sort of paraphrase the story, but he linked me up with a Sherpa. I dropped out of university, moved down to the South Island full time with just a little bit of rudimentary indoor rock climbing experience and maybe the odd ski trip. In terms of my experiences, and I just basically trailed the Sherpa around the mountains for about 2 or 3 seasons. He had already guided Mount Everest a number of years before.
So this is a Nepalese Sherpa?
A Nepalese Sherpa.
Came to New Zealand?
Yeah, came to New Zealand to do his guide certifications.
Amazing.
And so I just drafted in behind this guy, almost outsourced all the decision-making around the snowpack and weather and all the stuff that's actually going to get you killed if you get it wrong. And trailed in behind him, learned a whole lot. Fast forward a year or two, I became a mountain guide.
Guiding in the South Island.
Guiding in the South Island, so guiding Mount Cook, guiding Mount Aspiring, those sort of mountains. That led to a contract in Antarctica, led to Alaska. And really funny how life unfolds at times. So I'd been working on this goal of, I'd set myself the goal early in my 20s that I want to guide Mount Everest. I figured that was the only way.
I mean, you don't do things by halves, do you? You know, get into mountaineering and your goal is Everest. I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah, start big, work back.
Yeah.
You know, like a lot of us do, right? And I suppose that's what we do in business as well, start big, work back. And so I'd had all this stuff on my CV, you know, Mount Cook, Antarctica, running sort of polar expeditions in remote locations, you know, away from Scott Base, where I was based for 6 months. Went up to Denali, as I say. So it's sort of ticking through the kind of CV you're going to require to become an Everest mountain guide. Yeah. But the way that it eventually happened is I just walked into a cafe in Queenstown where I was living at the time, and Russell Bryce, who ran the Himalayan Experience Expedition on Mount Everest, who lives up in France, runs his business in Nepal, and was only in New Zealand. He's a Kiwi, but it was only in New Zealand for 2 days. We just happened to meet in this cafe, Joe's Garage, and spotted him, recognised him from Everest Beyond the Limit, the Discovery Channel documentary series. Walked up to him, shook his hand, said, hey, you know, my name's Johnny. I'm a New Zealand mountain guide. I've been doing this, and this. I'd love to work for you on Mount Everest.
Wow.
It was as simple as that. And so he just stood up, handed me his card and said, send me your CV.
How I see that is fortuitous, right? That's the universe bringing you to the right place at the right time.
Give yourself the chance to get lucky.
Yeah.
You know, if I hadn't had those things on my CV, that wouldn't have been the opportunity. But through that whole process, I had maybe 5 of those, what I call synchronicities, sort of unexplainable coincidences. And that was a really amazing one because he said to me afterwards, and I went back and forward with him for about 2 years until I actually finally got the job. But he said, look, Johnny, I was only in New Zealand for 2 days. I was in Queenstown for 2 hours. I was in Joe's Garage, the cafe, for 20 minutes.
Wow.
And you just happened to strike it lucky.
You created your own luck, really.
Created my own luck, I suppose. But another funny old thing that happened at that time was fast forward 2 years, I'd been in touch with him. He said, look, you're not on the expedition this year. For some reason, I figured I was. And I came back up to Auckland. My brother had cancer at the time, so I was spending a bit of time away from the mountains in Auckland. And my brother said, hey, are you going to Everest this season? My new boss had just told me I'm not going. And I said, yeah, I'm going. And I said, he doesn't know it yet, but I know I'm going. I don't know how that works. I still to this day don't know how that works.
I think you manifested that. I mean, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and that's why I'm such a big believer in manifesting these sorts of things, like creating your own luck, but creating a bit of energy around something. I think it does open doors for you where if you didn't have that energy, those doors might not have opened.
I love this.
Yeah.
This is right up my alley.
Yeah, so that was a really interesting thing, and I think...
so how did you actually get... So, you know, you knew you were going, your boss didn't, so how did you actually end up going?
So returned to Wanaka from Auckland where my brother was getting chemo treatment, and went for a rock climb as you do down the Matuki Valley, bumped into one of his mountain guides who just walked up to me and said, hey, Johnny, I've just pulled out of the expedition. You might want to give Russell a call.
See? Amazing.
So emailed him that night and got a response on my first ever smartphone the next morning. And he said, you're on the expedition. And I literally jumped out of the window. It was first story, so it was ground floor. So it wasn't
dangerous.
I didn't break my ankles at that point. Jumped out the window and just did sort of laps of the garden. But point is that led to actually guiding Everest in 2010. Standing on top of the mountain, being hugged by Purbatashi, who had climbed it 22 times at that point. And, you know, we're talking about whether there's any pollen. There's hay fever season at the moment on the top of Mount Everest. Well, there's not, but I was blaming that on the little tear that sort of ran down the cheek at the time because it was the fulfillment of a dream. Of a dream since I was 7.
Well, you know, we could talk all day about this because Everest, I mean, how incredible. And, you know, I have such huge admiration for you. But we'll bring it back to business because obviously, you're running an amazing business and the two are linked. So tell us, how do you go from mountaineering and guiding Everest to, coming up with the idea for a logistics business? What's the link? What's the segue?
The link there? Yeah, good question. So look, through that mountaineering career that I'd lost quite a number of friends. So a lot of mountain guides through that period had died, avalanches, falls and the like. And that you're going to come across, you're going to have an accident at some point. It's almost guaranteed. And then are you going to get lucky? So I knew that I had to transition. I was thinking about starting a family. My sense of responsibility in that regard is actually greater for me personally than my sense of adventure. That's not always the case, but for me personally, that is. So I was always pretty sure if I was in the position I was lucky enough to have children, that would be the end of mountaineering. So I was just looking for a new career and came across the annual report, Mainfreight's annual report, where within it they sort of showcased their business and their business leaders. And I'd sort of heard about some of those leaders, through the traps, and they had a targets and achievements page on there. And it was always something that I'd done, set a goal, put a stake in the ground and then hold myself accountable to achieving that target, that goal. And you don't always hit them, but obviously they take you a long way oftentimes, and sometimes in places that are even better than the original goal. So I'd always done that. I felt like that was the corporate kind of representation of my own personal approach. Started there at Mainfreight, just on the dock, no leg up in any way, just started in an entry-level role, unloading trucks off the dock, sorting freight, loading delivery trucks, and moved up through the business over the course of sort of 3 or 4 years, and ended up running one of the divisions of Mainfreight to Home. And that was a great experience. I learned a lot through that process about business. When I walked through the doors at Mainfreight, I knew nothing about a P&L, a profit and loss statement, had no idea of really a balance sheet. I'd invoiced out a few guiding companies, but that was about it.
Yeah.
So on the job learning there was just phenomenal.
Yeah.
It is education is optional, learning is mandatory. That's the ethos there. And Bruce Plested, the founder of that business, laid the foundations. A big part of what we did there was educate the team as to what drives profitability and sustainability in that business model. And another one was watch your debtors, collect your cash.
I've heard this many times.
Yeah, and that's a real
cash flow.
And that's a real thing that's given a lot of emphasis within the Mainfreight business. So I was very, very lucky to be exposed to business leaders. And
well, you say lucky, but you obviously earned the position. You moved quickly up the ranks, so you obviously did really well to have that career progression. Yeah,
I worked a lot of extra hours, and I didn't put my hand out for them, because I always thought, look, if I put in the effort, it is a meritocracy. I'll be rewarded for it. Maybe not in the in the short term, but in the longer term, and that proved to be true.
Yeah.
So that would be my encouragement to any younger people in a corporate business. Don't look at it like a transaction. I think there's maybe a little bit too much of that these days. Look at it like an opportunity, and make sure you're on the right ladder. Don't be on the wrong ladder, but make sure you're on the right ladder. And if you are, and that business is aligned with your own personal values, and there's an opportunity there, career progression, then maybe put in the extra and don't put your hand out. It will be recognised.
I think that's very sage advice, and I hope lots of people take it on board and listen to it.
Yeah.
So you worked up the ranks at Mainfreight, and then how did you get into Hitrak and Onsen? Tell me, what was the motivation to kind of go, actually, I think I could do something in this space?
Well, it was just, there was no lightning bolt. It was just a gradual exposure to a problem. And the problem in the freight logistics space is, well, the opportunities are perhaps along the lines of using technology to drive efficiency, reduce costs, and derive actionable insights. So being able to actually collect the data and then interpret the data to then make the right decision.
Yeah.
And I saw a little opportunity to, businesses like Mainfreight invest heavily into their software programs, IT, but the rest of the market didn't have a comparable product. And so really the very simple insight was the freight sector could do with some better tech. to do those things: drive efficiency, improve connectivity, reduce cost, and produce actionable insights that decisions can be made upon.
Yeah.
Based upon.
It's a big sector too, right?
And it's a big sector.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a big opportunity.
A big opportunity, yeah. So I decided to leave Main Freight, start my own freight company, with the tech being the differentiator.
So that's a big call, to leave a secure job with a young family to go out. How did you have the confidence to do that?
You set off to climb a mountain in the morning, and you could stand on top of that mountain, and that's a great metaphor for achievement, or you could get killed trying.
Yeah.
Right? But if you don't try, you won't get the reward.
Yeah.
So sometimes just starting, I think the hardest thing of any big goal, the biggest goals that I've ever achieved, and they're moderate. I would not put them up on any pedestal, but
I would. I mean, Everest.
Well, no, you're too kind and you're generous, but I think the key thing there is just starting.
Yeah.
Taking that first step. And so I'd had enough experiences doing that through my career and we've all got imposter syndrome. We all go, oh no, it couldn't possibly be me. I couldn't possibly do that. But then when you've actually climbed enough mountains and you reflect back on it, you're like, oh, turns out I'm actually okay.
I can do that.
I can do it. And then you also realize that a lot of other people could do it if they took that first step. So I was happy to take the first step. And the real secret sauce for that on-send business, or for Hitrak as it is now, it didn't have a name at that point. It was just our own internal operating system.
So you started with OnSend and you formed a software to help OnSend. So OnSend was trucks. I mean, I remember seeing them around town.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, so what is a freight company? A freight company is a sticker on the side of a truck, is about it. It's a network of people and assets, and it's an operating system. Yeah.
To figure out which truck you're sending where, when, timely fashion, delivering things for people.
Exactly.
Moving things.
Yeah. That's right. So what Hitrak is an operating system for the efficient movement of goods from point A to point B at scale. And it's used by a network of people. So within a freight business, you've got drivers, you've got sending customers, you've got receiving customers, you've got dispatchers and admin and CS and finance people. It's a common platform that they all log into to essentially get the right information with the right actionable insight to take the next step to play their part. Because the supply chain, is just that, a bunch of people linked together moving freight from one part of the country to another. So Hitrak is a multi-application product with applications that reflect those different users. And
you gave me a demo once. I mean, it's got a really nice UX, so it's pretty sophisticated. And you did say you
inspired by Xero.
The Xero for logistics, I think, which I loved.
I did, because what does Xero do well? It's got a beautiful user interface. It's cloud-based. The information's accessible anywhere, anytime.
By different parties.
It drives collaboration, drives automation. Well, these are all things that are helpful equally in a freight context.
Yeah, cool.
And so you can be inspired by other businesses and just go, okay, well, if I took that, how would that work? If I took that, how would that work? But those guiding principles, and Xero was maybe one of those trailblazers that it's pretty hard not to be inspired by as a Kiwi business owner. So I'll just quickly share with you how Hitrak came about. Over a short period of time, short being 1 or 2 years, realised that the real value in what we're building wasn't the sticker on the side of the truck or the goodwill from our customers or the network that we did or didn't have. It was the operating system. We were starting to get inquiries about that. Right. And OnSend very quickly got around about 50,000 5-star reviews from consumers.
Amazing.
And that wasn't because our people were any better than we had really good people, really dedicated people, but there's great people in every business around the country. So it wasn't like we had these special people that were just simply better. It was because we were giving them the tools to do the job. Yeah, and those tools was the operating system, Hitrak, that we started to think about branding and externalizing and commercializing. And being asked about by other businesses. So we decided eventually to sell OnSend. We sold that to Freightways now. They own that.
And have they kept that brand?
They've kept that brand for the time being. It's up to them what they do with it into the future, but we provide them with a license.
So you license, Hitrak you license
so
to
it's
others.
a standalone product now. So turns out I'm founder, CEO of a tech company. Well, that was never on the cards.
By accident.
Accident.
That's pretty cool. And I think what's awesome is that, you started with the idea of a logistics business with the tangible assets, the trucks.
Yeah.
But actually what you realised was the magic was actually in the software that you developed to run your own business, but actually realised that that's something other businesses really need.
That's exactly right. So Hitrak automates and optimizes real-world operations. So if it happens in the real world, like freight is everywhere. It's responsible for the food on the shelves and the roads that we drive on and the trees that line those roads and the whiteware, the fridges, the freezers, the washers, the dryers, the furniture. It's even the structural steel and the panels and the cladding on buildings and on houses. Everything that you see as you walk through a cityscape has been moved on a truck.
Yeah,
down to every last thing, less the sky, more or less. And so it's a paper-based industry by and large, and these digital tools can help take away the burdensome and manual systems and processes that people otherwise have to do, with some variability. So in terms of end customers, why would a customer of ours want Hitrak? Because fundamentally it enables them to become the best version of themselves, giving their teams the tools for the job to give consistent, convenient, visible services to their customers. And say someone buys something online, if you think about it, you're getting a delivery from a freight company or a courier service, you're really only after three things. Consistent delivery. If it's going to be 2 days the first time, you want it to be 2 days the second time, third time, fourth time. Consistency. Convenience, you want some degree of flexibility, and digital connectivity.
You want to be able to track.
You want to be able to track it, and that's the visibility bit.
Yeah.
So you're absolutely right.
So this is a great segue. You talked about productivity and digitalization, digital tools, which is obviously what you're providing. So it was just last week that the Treasury's chief economist, Dominic Stevens, gave an update on basically the declining productivity of our country. And this is something that I've talked about a lot.
I love that you're beating the drum on this.
Yeah, so digitalization, productivity, we have got a problem in our country with productivity. And one of the answers is making sure that businesses are leveraging digital tools to be more efficient and more effective. Yeah. So tell me your views on that. I mean, obviously that's what you're promoting as well, as being more efficient and effective with the use of digital tools. Yeah. What's your approach?
Well, the approach is ever evolving, I'd say, is our approach. But I think it's a scary subject matter for a lot of people, particularly when you hear stories out in the media. This failed implementation, that failed implementation, it's cost businesses this much. They've invested all of this time and it's actually impacted their business in a negative way. So it's a big, scary subject matter, I think, for a lot of businesses. So I think just like your mum used to say, clean your room and then give you a little bit of follow-up advice, which is just start in one corner. It's good advice. A lot of the stuff you go back to your mum and you go, geez, what would she say? And if you follow up on that, it probably leads you somewhere that's a good first step. So I think just starting is a big one. Not all decision-making should be automated, but some decision-making within a business, some processes can be automated. So, again, and we haven't spoken about this, you haven't asked me to speak about this, but Xero is a good example where, just automating the reminders, the follow-ups on unpaid invoices, for example.
Try and get your cash flow working.
Yeah, and what putting the first thing first, like collecting the cash for the services or the product that you've provided, right? That's fair enough. So I think starting small in terms of that digital journey.
One step at a time.
One step at a time. Yeah. Do you want to automate strategic level decision making? Probably not. But do you want to automate some of the procedural, process driven, repetitive tasks that some of the team are doing that actually, if they're freed up, they could start to have a conversation with their coworker. They could maybe pick up the phone and speak to that customer and go, hey, how are you doing? Is there anything more we could do? Free them up to just lift their gaze and think a little bit further afield.
Yeah, and look, with generative AI, there's so much coming in this space as well in terms of, making things more efficient, more effective, tools to help with communications, with, all those things that actually a human doesn't necessarily need to do.
That's exactly right. And things like communications. So even just playing around with tools like WhatsApp.
Yeah.
It's not a big one. Just play. Okay, if we're all on the same page and everyone sees what, the application of that technology needs to be correct. It can't just be a team-wide messaging board that everyone has a lark with. But if you set up your channels correctly, there's a low-cost way of actually just trialing centralized communication and seeing how that goes. So I think starting small, building some confidence, and it's hard to imagine what you've never experienced. So one of the challenges we've got is our platform is an integrated platform. It integrates between the order management side of things that I've explained. It integrates telematics, which is the tracking of the asset, the truck, and it integrates communications. So now we know that the truck has driven to that location, it's picked up exactly those items, and the system, because communications is integrated within it, can fire off messages at scale much more readily than if someone's got a phone and picking up and dialing numbers and missing calls. It can do it in a traceable way at scale. So now we can get the system to behave in a certain way. It won't just tell you what's happening. You can configure it to take the next step. And then if you build the software in the correct way, the people that actually get those messages can input information back into the system that the system can recognize and take the step beyond that. So you're actually building a scalable process that's supported by technology, and technology is only going to be successful if you consider people, process, and technology. So you're always going to need to back it up with some people. It's not about replacing people; it's about augmenting their capabilities. And
I love that, and that's exactly how we think about it as well. Like the role for people is changing, but it's not disappearing. We could talk all day about all of this stuff, and we're going to have to do another episode, Johnny, because I think there's just so much we could dive into. But I really want so you've talked about some of the challenges you've faced, but I want to know, like, you've done so much in your life, and obviously you're doing such an amazing job with Hitrak. What is something that you are really proud of? We don't celebrate our successes as much as we think about our challenges. So I want to think about, what is something that you're super proud of?
It's a good question. It's a funny one though, because I don't think actually when you're doing it you stop too much and reflect on it, because there's always so much more to do. And I don't know if I do actually or have ever really sat back and gone, oh geez, go me, what a great job. There's always someone that's doing something bigger, better, that you find more impressive. So I think keeping a perspective on that, but maybe just in your own quiet way. Someone shoots a hoop in basketball and they point to the guy that gave them the assist or the girl that gave them the assist. I think in ways bigger, but also maybe more so even in smaller ways, I think it's good just to acknowledge others and how they've actually helped you get to where you've got to. What am I proud of? I think trying to have a very personable approach to business and try and keep people at the heart of our decision making. So if we're building software, it's with the intent to actually help people do their job better. And I get a huge amount of satisfaction in doing that. I get a huge amount of satisfaction in implementing our software well into businesses and helping their teams. They go home 2 hours early. They're going home to their families 2 hours early. That stuff is really meaningful to me, more meaningful than standing on top of a mountain, if I'm honest. This is the stuff that I'm really passionate about these days. This
really brings me to my final question, which is bringing it back to your why. We talk a lot about the why. Why are people in business, And so for you, with the amazing work you're doing, what impact do you hope to have on the world?
We'd like to become the primary operating system for freight in Australasia. That's the big, hairy, audacious goal. That's what we'd like to do. If we achieve that, I think there's a lot of good that we can drive throughout, society, really. And again, big goal, but you've got to have that Everest and work back. So a more efficient supply chain, transport sector, a more accountable transport sector, a lower cost transport sector with more visibility, better tools for the people that are administering the transport sector, will mean that the goods on the shelves will be slightly cheaper. That the experience of people waiting at home for a delivery will be slightly better. That will be respecting their time a little bit more, multiplied by many, many tens of thousands, because it's a scale sector. And this is what's so exciting for me about what we're doing, is that we're solving a problem at scale. And I think through the great work of our team, who, just impress me every single day, they're just remarkable people, actually looking at these problems and solving them in innovative ways that I would have never have imagined and couldn't conceive because I don't have those skills. Doing that as a team and having a positive impact on a sector that touches the lives of so many people day to day. I think that's
I love that. And, Johnny, you are the most fascinating and humble human. And I have no doubt that Hitrak is going to reach its Everest, just like you have, with you at the helm. So thank you so much for joining me today. It's been such a great conversation. And we'll definitely have to have another one and continue and dig more into the mountaineering and Hitrak.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
Thanks.